In this video, we'll try to break down what the OTC market is. We'll go over which candlesticks are best to use and what time frames are best for trading. We'll also look at ready-made tools that we'll use in this market, which will do a pretty decent analysis for us. But I'll also show you ready-made strategies that can bring you 80 to 90% winning trades. The video is going to be pretty packed, so get comfortable and let's get started. And watch this video carefully if you really want to make money in the financial markets. And of course, to find out what the OTC market is, since it's actually a very useful tool. Let's get to the video. The first thing I want to show you is a pretty simple pattern that any beginner trader can repeat. Watch how it works. For example, let's say we see a strong upward movement, just like here. So, if I want to open a trade following the trend, I need to wait for 2 to 4 candles of the opposite color. In this case, red candles. So, only after that do we open a buy trade. The same goes for a downward movement. We wait for 2 to 4 green candles, and then we open a sell trade. I hope you remember that. So this is a pattern that works really well. Just look, that's a whole 90 points from a single trade. At one point, it was almost 100 points. A really good trade. Let's wait for it to finish and then talk more about this pattern. Awesome. This trade brings me 560 bucks. Look, how should we act in the moment? So, if we want to trade for 1 minute, then we should set the candles to either 30 seconds or 15 seconds. 30 seconds is the safer option. Now, let's look at the case where you want to trade for 3 minutes or, say, 2 minutes. Then you need to use either 30-second candles or 1-minute candles. Remember the rule. When we have a correction, meaning the price moves against us, it will last from 2 to 4 candles. Only then will we open our trade. So, what does this actually look like? Look, for example, we have a really strong downward movement, and we can see that at one point there was a correction, good entry point for a sell, then another correction, another entry point for a sell. Here, there was just one candle. We skipped this move. And here again, yeah, that's the only downside. So, it turns out we have one loss here. Then here we also have a good entry point for a sell. That's a win. Let's even count. That's already 3 wins. Here again, we had 4 candles, so we could have opened a sell trade. So, as you can see, that's already 4 wins. Here's another winning trade. Here are another 4 candles, so you could have opened a sell trade. So, we already have 6 pretty good entry points. And then the price started to reverse. So, after the reversal movement, I saw that at that moment we had 2 candles of the opposite color, and I opened my trade to buy. But I was looking at 15-second candles for this. Basically, you can choose any time frame that works for you. Do you want 4 minutes? No problem, then just pick either 1 minute or 2 minutes per candle. So, I hope the timing part is clear now. Basically, this pattern works on any time frame. I'm comfortable trading on the 1 minute time frame and using 15-second candles. Now, about the trend. If you look at it on a global scale, you'll get really confused. For example, take this movement right here. Yes, in the moment we can see that here we had a strong downward move. Here it was going up, and here it was completely sideways. So, where should you be looking? Look at the most recent segment. In other words, zoom in as much as you can. Well, almost as much as possible. Just enough so you can see a few dozen candles on your screen. And then you check what the trend is right there. Yeah, if you had a downtrend here and you were making money on it, now it's an uptrend, and you can profit from that too. So, I hope the pattern is clear now. This is actually a pretty good example, and let's even open one more trade using it. After that, we'll move on to ready-made indicators and strategies that can help us work on the OTC market. And we'll also talk about what the OTC market actually is. That was just an example of a very simple trade that any beginner trader can repeat. But before we delve into that, I want to gently remind you, if you are looking to simply copy our trading signals and effortlessly make money from them, then you should definitely consider joining our exclusive elite community. To do this, you will need to message our dedicated support managers with the precise phrase, "I want to become an elite member." Then the team will add you to our elite community, where you can confidently copy our signals. We hold trading sessions every day, and they also take place on the OTC market, so even a beginner with no experience at all will be able to copy our signals. But it's not just like that. It's not for everyone. Only for those who truly want to trade and who are members of our community. So I recommend you first follow the links in the description, learn about our community, and then join us in the elite group. There aren't any tough requirements, but we only work with our partners, only with our subscribers. So if you want to copy our trades, you're welcome to use the link in the description. Now, let's move on to the OTC market. Look, Australian dollar, Swiss franc. What do we see here? Here we have a great upward movement, and then the price forms exactly those 3 Heiken Ashi candles of the opposite color, meaning red. So, accordingly, I open my trade to buy. As you can see, it's already a pretty good move, but let's not celebrate too early. By the way, yeah, across the entire OTC market, I recommend you use regular Heiken Ashi candles. Yes, if you're trading with a bot, we'll talk about that later. Then you can use any candles you want. But if you're using a strategy or trading on your own, doing your own analysis, then it's better to use Heiken Ashi instead of bars or regular Japanese candles. That will be much better. As you can see, the pattern worked here. I only had 3 candles and got a nice 20-point move. An excellent second trade brings me $700. So, the pattern works and you can really use it. Yeah, it's hard to talk about statistics when you've only made 2 trades, but still, every beginner will have good stats anyway. So, as I said, you'll have at least 80% winning trades with this pattern. So give it a try, and be sure to let us know in the comments or through our support account how this pattern works for you. Now, let's move on to the indicator. Yes, that alligator indicator actually works pretty well in this market. And let's go ahead and open a trade right now, since we have a pretty good setup. Look, on top of that, our pattern is also working here. So, that's already a good sign. What do we do here? How do we work with this indicator? Look, this indicator shows us the direction of the trend movement. In other words, whether we're moving up or down right now. And, accordingly, we can understand when the price goes into a correction. That's exactly our pattern. If the price has gone into a correction, then, for example, let's imagine we have this kind of downward movement. Of course, the best entry points will be from the top if we want to trade with the trend. So, our pattern is shown simply by 2 or 4 candlesticks. And the alligator indicator shows us this with these very lines. And when the price at the moment enters these lines, into the middle of our indicator, that's when we open our trades. That's exactly what constitutes a correction. An excellent first trade with the alligator brings me a good profit. So, where are we going to open trades with you? Look, like here, or let's look further at some examples. So what can we observe here? We have 1 entry point, 2 entry points, 3 entry points. These were profitable entry points. But unfortunately, the 4th one was a loss. So here, our statistics are 75%, specifically on this small segment. But that's only 4 trades. We need to look at the bigger picture. If we look at it globally, we also had some good entry points here. That is, the price needs to enter exactly this area. Look, right here. And then, on the OTC market, everything works perfectly. The green line should be below, and then, during a downward movement, we open a sell trade when the price touches this line. If we want to open a buy trade, on the contrary, we need to wait for a situation like this. When the green line is on top and the price is moving upward, we wait until the price enters the area between the green line and the orange line, and only then do we open a buy trade from there. What time frame do we use here? If you want to open trades for 1 minute, then use 15 seconds. That's a faster option, or you can use 30 seconds per trade. If you want to work, for example, with 3-minute trades, then I recommend using from 30 seconds per candle up to 1 minute. And, accordingly, just make sure your candles are multiples of those same numbers, from 2 to 4. So, if you follow this rule, everything will work very well and safely for you. Let's look at another example of a trade with this indicator and talk about the OTC market, how it works, when it's open, and when it's best to make money on it. By the way, it's better to skip situations like this with this indicator. So, if you see that the movement isn't going upward at the moment, but is moving more like this, then we skip that setup. We only trade during upward or downward movements. Please remember that. Here we have a decent setup on the New Zealand dollar to US dollar pair. The price is showing a nice upward movement right now. We can see that happening. The green line is on top, and the price is coming into this zone between the green and orange lines. Alright, let's keep an eye on this trade. So, when does the OTC market operate? If we look at the schedule, we'll see that the OTC market is open around the clock, all the time, while regular currency pairs are not. They have specific times when they're active and when they're closed. This depends on the fact that we have financial news, and that banks tend to take breaks, to rest, and as a result, they don't conduct trading. That's when the OTC market comes to the rescue. This is an over-the-counter market. In other words, there's no regulator here. On the one hand, that's actually good, but on the other hand, it's not so great. This is only a problem for banks or large institutions that need regulation and require stable synchronization of all asset prices. But for us, as traders, it's a huge advantage. The fact that our big friends, the corporations and banks, don't get in our way, so we can work here freely. What does this mean? For example, let's say we have a regulator here. Let's take a look and draw an example like this. Here, we have a regulator, and over here, we don't. So, how do we trade in this situation? Look, here we have a regulator, and here we don't have one. So, how does trading work for us in this case? All exchanges share data on all assets, how much a particular asset costs on their exchange, meaning how much traders have traded. Accordingly, they share this information with each other, and we end up with a kind of overall synchronization. So, all traders make their trades on their respective exchanges and can trade freely. In other words, through the regulator, it manages all the values for us. That's why on all exchanges during weekdays, the prices are very similar, almost identical. So, what happens on weekends or in the OTC market? Here, we don't have a regulator. So, you trade on your exchange, I trade on mine, and everyone trades on their own exchanges. So, we trade within the exchange, we trade with each other, but we do it all bypassing the regulator. That is, if we have just one exchange, then all the traders trade only among themselves without that scary regulator. And, as a result, this allows us to have very high volatility and very large payouts in the market. Yes, this market is a bit less predictable, but still, if you have all the tools, all the ready-made indicators and strategies, then you can earn very confidently in this market. Plus, the payouts here are very high, 90, 80%. That's also very convenient, but it's especially convenient for those in the US, where the main European market is always asleep at night, and trading happens exactly there. If you want even more tools, if you want ready-made strategies for the OTC market, then join us on the Vado Trading Booster Telegram channel. That's where you'll find all the ready-made strategies and all the tools that will help you earn. So go right now to the links in the description and join our community. There, we'll teach you how to make money on the OTC market and in the regular financial market. From there, it's all up to you. What do you like more? Anyway, I've left all the links in the description. Be sure to check them out and join us. Our training really helps many students earn money in trading. So I've left the links in the description. But let's move on. The next thing I want to show you is automated trading on the OTC market. I'm switching to Booster Bot. By the way, I'll leave a link to this bot in the description. I'm getting a new signal for the euro to Swiss franc currency pair. Let's make it a bit bigger. We select that currency pair and set the trade time to 1 minute. And now we wait for our signal. We get a buy signal, and we'll open a buy trade right from here. Let's just watch this trade. That's a pretty decent movement. Maybe the price will go into a correction now. So, the trader won't see this. Again, a beginner trader won't notice that. For example, there's a level here right now, and the price could bounce back quite well. But BoosterBot sees all of this, it analyzes, and accordingly, it can give you good advice on the OTC market about where the price is likely to go next. Yeah, as you can see, in the moment, a lot of beginners really thought that the downtrend was continuing, but BoosterBot spotted this reversal. Even if it's just for 1 minute, that's enough for us to make a profit. That's why you can be confident with BoosterBot. Plus, you'll always get a message on the OTC market about the current percentages, whether it's better to enter a trade or stay out of the market. By the way, that's 120 points. Just take a look, a really good trade from the bot. And you can see, I'm not doing any analysis myself. BoosterBot did all the analysis for me and brought me 1100 bucks. That's a pretty solid trade. That's why the OTC market is actually a really good option for working on weekends when the regular market is closed. It's also a good option if your time zone lines up with when you want to trade on the financial market, on Forex, but the markets are closed. So the OTC market really is a lifesaver. Another big advantage. A lot of our students really like the OTC market simply because it's so predictable. If you spend just a week or two watching the OTC market, you'll realize that it's actually very predictable and you can read it really well. So I recommend you practice a bit, and then you'll feel really confident trading on the OTC market. Plus, the payouts here are always high. So this alternative is actually a really good one. Once again, I want to remind you that I leave all the useful tools in the description, whether it's a link to our Telegram channel, a link to our trading bot, and of course, to our support account. If you have any questions, just message our team right away. They'll help you out and answer all your questions. In short, I'll leave all the useful links in the description and in the pinned comment. Be sure to let me know if you like this long video. Maybe there are other topics you'd like to see detailed breakdowns on. I'd be happy to tell you all about them. With that, it's time for me to say goodbye. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and see you soon.